Okay, as promised, we are recording this. I want to welcome everyone for joining us in another one of our ongoing series of webinars talking about Friendship Place programs and activities. This session is going to cover our Veterans First program, which does amazing work serving those who've served our country. I want to drop in the chat. We do have a website for making donations to our veterans program, and you can click on that there as you go through if you'd like to make a donation. But I'm going to turn this quickly over to Jean-Michel, who'll then turn over to Jonathan and Chris and let people talk. As always, these are meant to be interactive events, so please, as questions come to mind, by all means, drop them in the chat or wait till the end and raise your hand and ask them. I'm sure people have lots of good questions and learning about our work and activities. But Jean-Michel, over to you. I'm going to mute myself now.
Yes, well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for being online with us this afternoon for this conversation on Veterans First. I want to acknowledge the person who really was instrumental in developing an interest in serving veterans, and that's Mr. Tom Nermi, who early on talked to us and funded for 3 years through a foundation, the William S. Abel Foundation, a veterans initiative that allowed us to advocate at the district and regional level for veteran services. This is very early on, before services were being developed properly for veterans. So thank you, Tom, for being with us this afternoon. From this veterans initiative, which was staffed by one person, an advocate, we then decided to apply for funding through the Supportive Services for Veterans Families grant, which was started in 2011 by the Department of Veterans Affairs during the Obama administration, focusing on rapid rehousing, and now you'll hear about some other things too. This was a turnaround point for us at Friendship Place, this decision to serve veterans, and it certainly changed us in many ways. It also, within 1 year, took us to the regions level in terms of the services, DC and the 8 counties around us. So again, thank you for being online with us. And I'm going to turn this over to Jonathan Whitted, our director there. You're muted, Jonathan.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jonathan Whitted. I'm the division director of the Veterans First program here at Friendship Place. And I first want to give a brief overview of our program for people who are new to it. So we are an SSVF program that's, we get our funding through the VA. Similar to other SSVF programs, we are able to do rapid rehousing with participants that we serve, and we're able to ensure that they're able to not only find housing, but find ways to create housing stability. And it's a short-term assistance, and in doing that, we're able to do some short-term financial assistance in order to help individuals create some stability for themselves and get the ability to take over with maintaining housing for themselves after exit from our program. So currently, with a combination of vacant positions and staff that we currently have with our team, we have a structure of about 40 staff members. And with that, we have case managers and also some specialists that complement those case managers in order to help participants be able to achieve housing stability. Our case managers fully embrace, or our staff fully embraces, the Housing First model, and we use a progressive engagement, person-centered approach when we're doing case management for individuals. So that definitely helps us be able to tailor our services to the participants' needs, help meet them where they're at, and find ways to say yes, which is some of the core values that we have here at Friendship Place. Some of the program initiatives that we're involved with is, as I mentioned before, we do rapid rehousing. So 90-day, out of a 90-day time frame is when we try to find individuals housing, wrap services around them, and then quickly exit them from the program. In cases where people haven't reached housing stability in 90 days, we have the ability to be flexible with that and reinsert them for longer services. We also do prevention services as well too. So individuals and families who are facing eviction can also get our services. So we help them be able to resolve issues with landlords, get their arrears paid off. Also, we're able to help them connect with community resources so they can create that stability for themselves before we exit them from the program. One of the program initiatives that we were able to get in the past few years was shallow subsidy. And with this initiative, we were able to do a longer term assistance for about 2 years. And we're able to do 50% of the fair market rent for their current unit that they're in order to be able to help that person with a consistent subsidy while they're working on increasing their income or resources within the community. And also to connecting folks with employment, also working to connect them with benefits, which is SOAR or VA claims to get like service connection or HVRP too as well. And I saw someone in the chat mention defining shallow subsidy. So that is the term that the VA used for this program initiative. Shallow meaning that the subsidy covers only a percentage of their rent. This started off actually around 35% of the rent, and quickly the community, the VA realized that this is something that has been really benefiting a lot of the households that we're serving. And seeing if actually 50% of actually the subsidy was actually more of a was more of a benefit for households as they're trying to increase that housing stability in that 2-year period. This was something that we actually piloted. We were one of very few grantees that had this pilot. And because of the success of it, the VA actually opened it up to other SSVF grantees. And during the time when we were piloting the program, we actually were the ones that were actually helping a lot of other grantees with folks that it was deemed that they could benefit from this initiative. So we were able to get those individuals enrolled in our program and help them. And it helped us be able to coordinate with a lot of the other SSVF providers and our community partners too as well. That is some of the things that we have been doing before. I would like to talk a little bit about some of our staffing too that I mentioned before. Like I said, we do have 40 positions currently. We have the case managers that I mentioned before, but there's also a healthcare navigator that we have on our staff too. And this person is responsible for helping individuals that are currently having healthcare related challenges that might be leading to housing instability. The SSVF program office released this is like the funding to have a position like this, so that way we would be able to kind of meet the needs during the COVID-19 pandemic. Those individuals, we wanted to make sure that the folks that were the most at risk of the virus would be able to get connected with healthcare resources, ensure that they're able to find ways to protect themselves, especially since they might be in congregate settings within shelter. These individuals might not have access to healthcare already, so it was harder for them to get connected with finding the vaccine, things like that. That position was very instrumental in like making sure that we were able to, as a team, find resources during the pandemic, and also making sure that case managers had a little bit of assistance with helping folks get connected with getting the right insurance, making sure they're able to connect with the right specialists or primary care physicians, so that way that stability can be created as we're working towards finding housing. Also, we do have a position that's called a veteran staff attorney and benefits specialist. And this person is responsible for helping folks get connected with Social Security. They do SOAR applications. Also, they do VA claims to help them get connected with service connection disability income. And this person is an actual is an actual lawyer. So some of our folks that we work with do have legal needs too as well. This position has been able to get people connected with other legal resources, but then also give people guidance on what could help them make sure they're staying stable within the community if they're having kind of some legal challenges too as well. We do have an employment specialist, and this employment specialist does work with a lot of employers in the area, making sure that we're getting our participants connected with jobs that are viable to them, so they could be able to maintain housing in the future. This person does do hiring events too as well. During the pandemic, this was kind of harder to do, but we're trying to get that going again. We found much success with doing this and bringing employers in and having not just a situation where you normally see where there are job fairs, where employers talk about kind of the positions that they have within their companies, but actually hiring events so people can come there, apply, and interview on the same day. Also, the employment specialist does work with people one-on-one to help them with resume writing, also with doing job applications and giving them ability to connect with those employers. We also have an outreach team, which does a fantastic job of identifying folks who need our services. They go to the emergency shelters on a weekly basis. They attend continuum of care meetings, is involved in coordinated entry, where they are able to get kind of an understanding of where folks might be that need our assistance. We also are able to go out to meet people in encampments, who some folks are, obviously are living on the streets. Our outreach team can go to them. But we also do have a screening line too as well, where folks can call in for services, which our outreach team has the ability to answer those calls, talk with those people about kind of the things, the challenges that they're seeing, connect them with community resources, and then get them enrolled into our program. And that's a little bit of our kind of our structure here. Oh, there's one other position I do want to talk about too as well. I'm sorry about that, but it is a new position too, which is a community resource specialist. And this position is designed to help us create a network more of like resources for the participants that we serve. We do keep a pretty robust resource guide for our team that we actually do share with our community partners too as well, who also are very dedicated in increasing some of the resources that they have for the people that they serve. But this resource guide is updated by this community resource specialist as she's making connections in the community. She's also getting involved with some of the COC work that we do too as well. She serves as our housing specialist too, where we're able to have someone who can connect with landlords, talk to them about our program, helping them make sure that they understand like kind of the best ways to keep us up to date on any units that are coming available. things of that nature, and helping with those participants being able to connect with those landlords if they're having a lot of difficulty in getting housed in a given period of time. Yeah, the only other new things that we have actually that I would like to mention is over the summer, we were approved for a supplemental NOFA that gave us the ability to do another initiative that we started this current fiscal year. And part of that is actually housing navigation. So we have 3 positions that are designated to connecting with HUD-VASH teams in the area in order to help folks who are either enrolled already in SSVF or currently going to be matched to VASH to a VASH voucher, enroll in our program. So they'll be dually enrolled within HUD-VASH and SSVF, be able to help them get to housing a little faster. So to help the HUD-VASH teams that have been that have needed more assistance from SSVF in order to help people get housed. But I actually do have one of our assistant directors on the call with us today. Her name is Chris Petticelli, and she's going to talk to you a little bit more about that initiative.
Thanks, Jonathan. Hi, everyone. I am really excited about the VA kind of continuing to invest smartly in what they're seeing in the data. And part of, I think, where this housing navigation piece came from is that they were looking at the data and seeing this lag between connecting veterans who were really at the highest level of need, needing that permanent supportive housing with HUD-VASH that they would get, between matching and when they actually were signing the lease and moving in. So this housing navigation initiative came from a place of wanting to shorten that timeline and get people into their forever homes faster. So as Jonathan mentioned, we do have one of my teams is the housing navigation team with 3 housing navigators. One of which is we already have a signed offer letter. She is coming. And then another one we're in the process of hiring. So we are building up that team. We've been meeting with the VA and with other SSVF providers to build this out thoughtfully for the needs in the area, and prioritizing our attention and our funding where it's needed. So we are really excited about launching this right around the corner from it. It's been a lot of work, and I appreciate a lot of input from different players, whether that be the VA workers that have really stepped up and come to the meetings and been very forthright with the challenges that they've faced, whether that's barriers that veterans have with credit history, eviction history, criminal history, just other barriers where the landlords don't want to work with particular subsidies, which is not actually a legal practice, but just very honest conversations with them. And that's why I put in the information about the Justice in Housing webinar, because I think that is really important to have a broader understanding of those challenges. So yeah, we are able to pair anyone who, we're prioritizing these pairings to be with people who are already connected with permanent supporting housing like HUD-VASH. It could also be, people have heard of Section 8 housing, which is a non-veteran permanent supportive housing opportunity. We then would pair them with these housing navigators who will be able to take that veteran off of our traditional SSVF case managers, caseloads, allow them to work with other veterans in the area with lower needs, and then they can push to get them into that permanent housing sooner, whatever those barriers might be, and kind of addressing them head on. So another piece of this funding is also, if you're thinking about what makes an apartment a home for someone, it's not just getting them in there, getting them a bed and you're good, we're out of here. It might be, oh, does the kitchen have a microwave? Does the veteran enjoy watching TV and they need that sort of thing? So we have these landlord and tenant incentive funds that we're now able to help make that house a home. And, you know, whatever that might look like. If someone in a VA webinar even asked like, oh, well, you know, it sounds like we could spend this money on anything. Could we spend it on a game system if they would like video games? And the VA person immediately said yes. And I actually was pretty surprised by that answer. I was like, I mean, that makes sense. Like if you want a video game system and that will make your house a home, then why shouldn't you have that? So I think it's really cool, the flexibility that the VA is having here. I kind of saw it when we went from rapid rehousing and homeless prevention. We got shallow subsidy years ago. I was like, okay, so we're looking at ending veteran homelessness. We're kind of taking it to the next level to like end veteran poverty. Like that's sort of what that 2-year extension to our services is presenting. And this is presenting maybe not something with as good of a catchphrase like that, but I mean, it is presenting a way for us to not just say, hey, here's this apartment, you're good, we're out of here. It's like, hey, here's this apartment. How can we better serve you to make this somewhere you're comfortable, somewhere that's home for you, that's somewhere that you're looking forward to going. So yeah, I think that it's a really amazing opportunity that we have, and we're excited to get it started.
Thank you both. Lots of good information here. This is an opportunity for folks to ask questions. Unless Jonathan, Chris, you had anything else you wanted to talk about? I have a couple of questions and people I may actually call on if that's okay, as we're following up here. So Tom Nurmi, as Jean-Michel mentioned, you were here at the outset. What was your vision at the beginning when we were trying to really launch the idea of serving veterans? What was your vision, and what are your thoughts as we sit here in 2023?
Well, good question. I mean, this was something that we collaborated with Jean-Michel, and we sort of discussed where we could start to build this thing. And I must say, of all the grants and investments that my foundation has made over the years, this probably was the most successful one in terms of the exponential growth of this incredible project. So it wasn't the vision that we had that we would get to this point, quite frankly. It's a testament to what you all have done with this project. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Very kind words. Appreciate that. Bob Adler, I see you have your hand up.
I was curious what the all-in rent is that a DC landlord might expect to receive.
That's a great question. So it varies. Depends on if someone has a 1-bedroom room for rent. We definitely we house.
Let's say a 1-bedroom.
A 1-bedroom. So you could see anywhere between like maybe like 1,100 to possibly 1,400 there, depending on the area. And that's normally like the units, I think, that with our participants that we serve, them being a very low income, could possibly like manage, I think.
And I would add to that.
Thank you.
Oh, I would add to that if you're talking about any of the HUD-VASH participants, that they like HUD-VASH posts it by zip code, what like is allowable, I guess, by that HUD-VASH voucher.
Very good. No, thank you. One question that comes to mind for me is the need for doing advocacy work around this work. And, Jonathan, I know you've had some contact with USICH and meetings there. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we were approached by the VA to attend a USICH meeting back in December to kind of talk a little bit about the work we've done with prevention and some of the creative ways that we've been able to help folks making sure that there's not a lot of veteran households entering in the homelessness system. I talked a little bit about some of the stories that we've had over the years. I talked about someone that I worked with that that was losing housing because they lost employment, and they were having substance abuse issues too as well, just because he just lost his wife And what we were able to do as far as helping this person be able to get connected with a payee rep because they did have income. Also helping them be able to increase their benefits, helping them get connected with a VSO in order to get a claim in for a service connection. And then also working with that person to get some of their arrears paid too. And then we also talked about some of the progressive strategies that we've done before. And actually just this past September, we did that one of our staff members came up with this idea, which I thought was fantastic. And it was just calling towards reaching out to the some of the site-based PSH programs in the area in order to talk with them about, like, are you seeing any of the households, the veteran households that you have currently, are they facing eviction? Is there anyone that we could possibly reach out to talk to them about enrolling them into our program and seeing if we could help? And just in the month of September, like, we served 15 households that way and prevented them from eviction. So I thought that that was really key, and that's some of the things that I shared with them, and I think doing kind of that approach in the future is going to be very helpful.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about some of the other providers that we work with or national organizations, such as National Coalition for Homeless Vets, so on and so forth? And
Yeah, for sure. As I know we mentioned before, we do serve DC and 8 surrounding counties. So we are heavily involved in each of those COCs. And with that, like, we do work with a lot of different veteran work groups. So that's one. Currently, we also hold leadership roles on some of them too as well, those work groups. Currently, I hold one of the leadership roles within our Veterans Now work group, which is with Washington, D.C., where we find ways to strategize in order to keep improving the system for the veterans that we serve. So whether it's finding ways to make sure people are appropriately matched to the correct housing resources, finding a better process for that, or whether it's working on ways that outreach can be better for the community too. Those are some of the things that we kind of talk about, some of the strategies and the goals that we work towards in order to see that the numbers are reduced within Washington, D.C. Some of our staff has had leadership positions within Prince George's COC too as well, where they've helped manage that by name list and their coordinated entry. As you mentioned before too, we definitely have had some outside community partners and have worked with them as far as like talking about best practices. I know I have, and there's some other people that have been very good about connecting with NCHV and organizations similar to it to be able to go to present on best practices too as well. But yeah, so we try our hardest to make sure that we connect with as many of our regional partners and ones that outreach to the whole nation in order to make sure that everyone's part of like doing some of this great work, and we're sharing best practices, and then we're learning things too as well.
thank you. Chris, earlier you had mentioned that sometimes landlords are a little reluctant to accept vouchers or accept the folks we're working with. I mean, what sort of arguments do you make with them, or how do you convince them to do the right thing?
That's a great question. And I think it is a challenge for a lot of our veterans before they're working with us, and even once they're working with us, that they can get the foot in the door with certain units that they really want when they have evictions, or maybe they have, any other number of kind of past barriers that are presented between them and that, signing that lease. So we do have like a landlord engagement, sort of progressive engagement strategy. We provide them with a lot of information. We have like a packet of information that outlines all of the things that we are able to provide without, we're not able to guarantee rental assistance for X amount of time. We do sort of take that as it comes with what we need to do to support a veteran stabilize in housing. But they're not legally able to say, oh, we won't take someone who has a voucher. That's sort of any landlord that might say that like straight up, that's why they wouldn't work with a veteran is not really aware of what housing laws are out there in place to protect tenants. So especially in DC, like DC has some of the more tenant centric laws out there in the area. Since we do work in 3 counties in Maryland and 5 counties in Northern Virginia. So I think that is the challenge for our team, is to kind of stay aware of the different laws in the counties that we're seeking housing in. We do, I think, predominantly serve veterans in DC. So DC is, thankfully a lot more tenant friendly than the others. But we do try to talk through what the concerns are. And, if you can't sort of, play to more of the giving back heartstring elements of it, it's, hey, listen, there are a lot of empty apartments out there. We want to help get our veterans housing. We want to help you have less vacancies and have that income coming in. We have a really good track record. We can provide them with data of like the housing that we have assisted veterans in getting. And knowing that we aren't just looking to, get a veteran into this box of an apartment and like present that to every veteran. We want to work with that veteran, what they're able to afford. We're doing a budget with them and what we need to be doing on our end to help them be sustainable exit. So we're not just saying, okay, great, it's been 90 days, you're housed, the lease is signed, we're out of here. We're saying, hey, it's been 90 days, you're housed, the lease is signed, are you good? And if you're not, what have we missed? Like, what are we not providing? Like, what additional support do you need from us? What can we help to empower you to do for yourself? And, kind of go from there. I think each individual situation is just that, it's individual. So and it's the same with the landlords, really. We have plenty of landlords that really, they just need like one conversation and they're in. And then we have other landlords. I still remember one of the first landlords, I went from being in outreach to stepping into a management role. And one of the first landlords I had to work with, you'd think that this was the only person I had to talk to for my whole job. Like, I talked to them multiple times a day for like multiple weeks consecutively. And they finally were like, you know what, this I don't think is for me. And it was a really good lesson for me in knowing that like some people you're not going to end up working with. And that's the beauty of working in a really large city that has a lot of housing opportunities and a lot of variation in that housing. So if that was the only unit that a veteran wanted to live in, now the challenge goes to us to say, hey, let's find the match to that unit. There is another unit that falls into like their must-haves, and like there is some flexibility with most people and what they're, willing to say, well, maybe that's not a must-have, maybe that's a preference, and maybe this other option is a great replacement. So yeah, it's a great question though.
Thank you. Bob Adler, I see you have your hand up.
I was familiar with a program out west that in effect, when someone wanted to develop land, they had to set aside a certain proportion for parks. And I'm curious whether in the district, if somebody's going to build a building with 50 apartments or more in it, is there some requirement for them to have some percentage of, however the affordable unit is defined, the 11 to 1400 a month or whatever the metric is a large scale development conditioned upon providing affordable housing in that development or elsewhere? Do you know?
Yeah, that's a great question. So going back to the example of what I mentioned for like the amount that we usually see on average, how much we see 1-bedrooms we come across. I think that if people were looking towards like building some like a building that would work with some of the programs out there that would benefit some of the individuals with like low income. I mean, as Chris mentioned, like if it's with kind of like if it's voucher based, there is like a scale that is defined on HUD's website that talks about the different rents that are that meet like rent reasonableness for the people who receive PSH. They could use that as a way to like know how to, I guess, price their units appropriately. But for our program or different rapid rehousing programs, I say like if somebody's really making something kind of like rent reasonable, I mean, if based off of like what I've seen for a lot of the households that we serve, something around like $1,000 would be like great for a unit. I know that sometimes that's hard to find for some of our participants, but I know that around that number is good for a 1-bedroom. I've seen people be able to like maintain that on average, but it just really depends on each person or each household that you're working with. Some people can, they want to have a 1-bedroom unit, but they can only afford 900 or 800. So it's like trying to find that, and sometimes those things are available. We are able to find that. It's a little harder because, like I said, on average, you usually see the numbers above 1,000. But yeah, it just kind of depends.
I raise it because I would think that a developer who's developing something large has some pro forma in terms of what the expected rentals would be for most of the units. And my question was whether whether the district has ever conditioned those large-scale developments on at least a good faith attempt for a few of the units to be at a pro forma that's a reduced amount of rent, so that we have at least some percentage of affordable units being built as a condition to the newer construction, which sometimes destroys something which is affordable. Anyway, I just raised it as a question. It seems to be something that a lot of states have done with parks, but seem to be less able to do it with shelter.
Lynn Amano has something to contribute, I believe, on that front. Then Don, I'll call on you if that's okay. Lynn, did you want to add something?
Sure. So this is actually sort of a broader based question. It's not only true for veterans, but pretty much for all of the housing that's built in DC. And the answer to your question is a little complex, but I will say yes. There are requirements that are in place. There is law, and then there's practice. And so those two things always don't play together as nicely as we would like them to. For example, and sometimes DC, like the DC government, for example, will make significant concessions in order to get more affordable housing. So there's a big affordable housing, and there's a big housing complex that's going to be built on the Anacostia. And this was a subject that came up at the end of December. It was actually the last legislative session of the previous cycle, where DC owns this land and agreed to lease it for $1 a year to a major developer in exchange for building 30% affordable housing. And usually the thing about the affordable, and the other thing that happens is any developer who wants to access the Housing Production Trust Fund monies, which help them build affordable housing, also has parameters that they're supposed to meet. And right now that money is supposed to be going to projects that include 50% housing. But the DHCD has often referred to that as what they call an aspirational goal rather than an actual requirement. Although the recent projects they put out, they do seem to be doing, it at least looks like they're doing a better job. So it's pretty complex, and it has a lot to do with the balance between wanting to get development put in and sort of the tolerance level and what we can get to convince developers that they need to put in. And one of the things that Jonathan, I know, mentioned was one of the big challenges in DC is affordable larger apartments, especially for families. There's just very few affordable 3-bedroom units, for example, for like a very large family, 2-3 bedrooms. 1-bedrooms are much more common and don't work in some cases, for like an extended family. So yeah, so I will let you go back to veterans, but that is true across the board. And it's also sort of the same dynamic. I will say, I live in Montgomery County. We have the same issues here. So
Very good. No, thank you, Lynn, for weighing in on that. Tim Ernst, I saw you had asked a question in the chat, but it looks like, Chris, you've answered that. Don, you had your hand up, and thank you for waiting.
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
We can. Okay. Actually, I'm talking to you from San Diego, so this is a long range conversation. What I'd like to know is there anything having to do with a veterans docket, excuse me, like there is in Fairfax County? Because you find that a lot of the vets have legal problems, and the Fairfax County legal docket, veterans docket, is a really wonderful instrument to help them out. Is there anything like that in the plans for DC? I know DC doesn't have it now, but is it in the plans?
I defer to others. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that is something I'm not aware of that being in the plans of something that's going to be happening. But that's something that, I'd definitely be interested to see if that is something that is going to occur. I know that if veterans are having any legal issues at this current time, they're depending on what the issue is. If it's something that's related to housing, obviously, there is legal aid that's through the landlord tenant court down in Judicial Square, but there is also for veteran related matters, VSOs that are actually in the areas that could help with like things such as discharge upgrades, once again, like claims as far as like service connection, disability income, and helping them get VHA benefits if that's something that's that is due to them that they have not been able to get for whatever various reason, things of that nature.
Sure. I was thinking more though in terms of like with the Fairfax one, it has to do with the veteran having more serious legal problems, let's put it. For instance, relative to drugs, relative to maybe armed, a coercion, he used coercion against somebody, relative to family issues, like there's a family court, there's a high, I forget what it's called, where there's high danger in this situation versus low danger. And it has to do more with not so much getting them their benefits as, if they get arrested, don't just throw them in the lockup and keep them there for 2 years. I mean, you're not helping him. Mm-hmm. You need to have a program that goes along with it. And I think it's a good program. And it might be something worth looking into. So that's my contribution. Thank you.
I can jump in on that, Chris. We're aware of this program, Don. So thanks for bringing it up. I think it's a model that we should replicate in the entire region and beyond. It's a form of diversion so that the veterans don't fall into the legal system. And we know how that system has a way to keep people in it. We
exactly.
recently had a webinar at American University on jail diversion for people with mental illnesses, for instance, a model out of Florida. It would be a great thing to replicate elsewhere, and certainly something we'd be interested in working on as an advocacy initiative, because too many of the vets, again, and too many people with mental illnesses get pulled into the system. And if you have any kind of psychiatric issue in the incarceration system is probably the worst place for you to be. We know that. So thanks for being
I think that's right. And I'll just add one more thing and then I'm going to shut up.
No,
and incidentally, you can hear a lot of traffic in the background. But for instance, for the vet that has real addiction problems, instead of sending to the lockup, what they do in Fairfax County is they say, okay, you've got to follow this program of rehabilitation. And as long as you follow it, we're going to keep you out of the lockup. If you slip up, well, then that's your problem. But I thought that was really good. one, you're helping the vet get rehab, and two, he's not in jail. He's maybe got a job or whatever it is, and that's so much better. Okay, thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Don, again.
Thank you for your feedback and thoughts. Other questions folks may have, because I know I have one or two that I can ask, but I want to defer to our viewers here. Okay. Well, I want to, I'll ask another question, but I do want to make a quick pitch. You know, through the generosity of a donor, we've established the Richard Soloway Veterans Assistance Fund, and I've dropped a link in the chat a few times there. So if you're watching this here live, you find the link in the chat. If you're watching this later on YouTube, you will be just email me at crutledge@friendshipplace.org, and I'll be happy to share with you that information. We rarely speak to our post-event viewers like this, so we imagine that they're out there. So let me ask a follow-up question, unless somebody else wants to ask something. One of the real standout elements of our work is our recognition and accreditation by other organizations, and I'll speak specifically to CARF. Jonathan, Chris, do you want to speak at all about what CARF accreditation is and what it takes to get it and what it means to outside organizations when people see that we have CARF accreditation?
Yeah, I could talk about that. So we've been CARF accredited for, I want to say we're going on our 7th or 8th year of it. Basically, this is a way that shows that your program or organization is meeting standards that are high standards, that you're definitely investing in the employees that you're working with, the program, also the people that you're serving. So they look at things of, are you making sure you're having adequate facilities? Are you making sure that you're implementing services in a way where staff have the tools that they need in order to make everything work? How are you connecting with participants? Are you evaluating your program from year to year? And in doing this, are you meeting eligibility requirements when you're enrolling them in your program? What does case management look like? Are you actually using a person-centered approach? What does that look like to you all? What are your outcomes? And also, when you're thinking about outcomes, how does this actually help the community that you're serving? And how do you highlight some of the other work that you're doing as far as connecting with the community in a broader scope? So kind of those things, just the fitness of your program. And in doing this and able to be accredited, it has actually led to us to get actually additional funding with the VA and secure kind of our grant and showing that we're actually upholding very high standards for our program and that we're capable of doing this work.
Thank you. Other questions from our viewers, our audience? If not, I do have a couple more. I can keep going.
Chris.
Yes, go ahead, Jean, please. Thank you.
Jonathan, for the 90 days before you tried to find an apartment for, do you have a facility? Is there a place where people live, or is it a daytime program? Is it like the Brooks where they're housed for 90 days and you work with them to find them follow-on housing?
So the individuals that are working with us, they may already be in emergency shelter or transitional shelter in the community, or they may not be. They could be literally in the streets. So our jobs is when we identify that person as being literally homeless, we figure out where currently are they staying. If it's someone who's in an encampment or they're on a street corner somewhere, something like of this nature, we're making sure that they know that some of these resources in the community exist. We can help them get to a shelter. We can help them get into GPD. And then from there, when they're in a location where they're able to at least have some sort of shelter, then we're working with them to find housing. So in certain situations too, because there's not if there's a situation where there's not enough shelter resources for that county or area that we serve, we can do a limited amount of emergency housing assistance. This is like if someone needed like hotel stay or something like of that nature. For instance, you may have a family that they have a lot of minor children in the household, and there might not be any shelter resource for that family to stay together. We've seen that it's been better to help them with emergency housing assistance, so then that way they can have at least somewhere that they could be until we can find permanent housing for them.
Thank you.
And I apologize, Jean. I had put something in the chat back to you, but I know the chat's been popping off. So yeah, apologies about that.
I just thought maybe your program didn't have a facility and you worked, on getting, working with landlords to get them in. But I just always, when I heard about the veterans program, I thought it was a facility, out on Connecticut Avenue somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, we actually, I feel like over the years, I've had a lot of conversations with providers and veterans alike, where they have that initial conversation with us and think like, okay, we are housing them like that night. Like I'm talking to them on the phone and I'm going to house them that night, whether that be in like a transitional place or like in an apartment that we own. So definitely it confuses a lot of people. So I hear you.
Thank you. What age or era are the people we're serving predominantly from? I mean, are we talking folks from Vietnam era? Are we talking from Gulf War era, Gulf War II era? Generally, is there a trend, or is it really bridge all years?
Yeah, we definitely see people in different eras. So when I started in the vets program, which was around 2014, you saw a lot of Vietnam era veterans. And now, as I've been here for close to 10 years now. You've now seen that it's kind of post Vietnam, kind of that era in there. And usually we see a lot of middle-aged males in our services. So anywhere between 40 to in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
So what we normally see.
Thank you. Susan Ekman reached out to me privately in the chat asking a question about helping a specific veteran. Susan, I don't know if you want to unmute or if you'd like to just email me offline and I can pass your specific question to Jonathan offline, because it's a bit detailed. I just don't know where we'll be able to get into the details today. So if you don't mind, Susan, email me and I'll connect you with Jonathan and he'll be able to answer in more detail, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, and I'll also put in the chat like the bridge to our program, that if anybody either wants information or they have a veteran that they speak with or someone who's been speaking with a veteran, I'll put our information in the chat as well, so you'll have it.
Right, because I know, and thank you, because that's a good idea. I will often hear from folks who come across somebody in their travels who is a veteran in need, and they ask, what can we do to help? And so we always do make that connection. So thank you. We have about a couple of minutes left here. So I'm going to ask one question to close us out here and then give everyone a chance to make their closing statements. Chris and or Jonathan, can you tell us what is the most exciting story or person you've successfully served? Like, what's your big win that just keeps you excited and going? Is there one that you can think of? That's a tough question.
I don't know if Chris wants to go first or not. Okay, well, I've always enjoyed being able to help individuals or families that everyone else tries to tell me that this person is, they're not able to, like, no one's able to help them. They just kind of pass them along. And there was one family that I worked with that started in DC. They moved around quite a bit, but every program that worked with them tried to label them as a problem or a nuisance. They would have a lot of challenges that they need to work through, and there was so many different organizations that I needed in order to help us kind of resolve their housing situation. I think when I was first working with them, they ended up in a hotel when that hotel wanted to kick them out. The hotel was also reporting that they couldn't work with them. We couldn't, like, we can't work with them at all. We have to, get them, out of here. They're difficult. And me being able to work with their needs and being able to, I guess, like, mediate so many situations and advocate for them on a daily basis was great for me. And it took a long time for me to get them permanent housing. All in all, it took us 2 years, but I was able to do that. And it was the most rewarding situation. And for the family, they're still housed today. And interestingly enough, like, they thank me every year. Every year they call me to thank me. And I think the power of that was that I not only was able to get them housing, but it was a situation where I really catered towards their needs. They had, a dog. They were running into situations where no one wanted to house them because of their pet. The household composition kept changing a little bit for the household. There were a lot of people that didn't want to work with them because of that. And there was just all these host of challenges, but I didn't look at that as barriers to getting them to housing, and I stuck with it, and we worked together. And I think that's a situation that stands out in my mind.
That's fantastic. Oh, thank you. Chris, is there one you want to share?
Just for the sake of time, I can summarize in saying I've really enjoyed over the years the amount of veterans that have said to me or to one of my staff, and they've told me about it, that we were the only ones that were really doing what we said we would do, that we're calling them back, that we're, making things happen for them where we can, and we're helping support them to make things happen for themselves where they needed to hear they could do it. So I really appreciate that part of this work.
No, that's a real testament to what y'all do. Chris, Jonathan, any closing comments before we go to Jean-Michel for his closing notes?
No, I just want to say thank you all for being able to join us for this call. And I appreciate all the questions too as well.
Thank you. Well, Jean-Michel, to you.
Well, I want to thank you all for being online again for us this afternoon for this conversation. I want to thank you, Chris, for organizing the call, Jonathan and Chris for being our speakers and providing so much information, including in the chat with these very precise statistics. And this is a great program for us at Friendship Place, and the partnership with VA has been a very productive one through the years. We're delighted to be part of what really is a national movement to rehouse vets and prevent them from becoming homeless. I can't say enough about this experience. I do want to thank you all for your support. As we always say, we could never do this without you. So thank you for coming back time after time for these webinars and for the way you help us. We appreciate it very much. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, everybody. I will stop recording now.
Thank you.
Everyone, have a good day.